You want, obviously, people to move to the new tax regime. So by when will you then look at phasing out 80C and 80D deductions? Because, that's really the core of investments, healthcare. When will this happen? What is your time frame to sort of move to the new tax regime entirely?
No, I'm not given myself a time frame. I'm more looking at it to make sure every Indian citizen makes his own choice, her choice. It's one thing for me to say I'm bringing in a better system, which is going to be less complicated, in fact, least complicated, which also is going to give you a rate which is going to be reasonable for each one of our levels of income, and make it attractive, therefore, for compliance and also for the rate. I pay less tax there. But it's another thing to have a system which is going on, where, unfortunately, I don't want to criticize anybody. Unfortunately, the impression is I have so many exemptions given, which incentivizes me to save for insurance cover, for medical cover, for even saving for better interest earning that I can have, and so on. I don't want people there to think that I've denied them that. Please if you want to have it that way. But it's not just one government or the other. In general, the philosophy that governed it was you'll have all those exemptions and you'll feel tempted to have yourself cover, insurance cover, give yourself insurance cover or savings or whatever. But your tax rates were so high. Yes. So it's nice to give you some incentives, but good enough for me to have a big return in terms of the tax that I collect. Yeah. But whereas what I'm giving you now, which was introduced 2 years ago, this is the second regime, and Prime Minister was very clear that taxpayers should know actually what they're paying and exactly feel comforted that they're not paying much. And actually bring in rates down, make it simple so that anyone sitting at home should be able to file their returns and know, and that's the end of the story. I don't need to keep immense documents and so on. So we brought that in, and steadily we are making it attractive, but not forcing anybody to get out of the exemption regime. But the fact remains there that the rates have been very high, and you've still got some discounts so that you can go with your...
So how many people do you think will migrate? Any sense that the government has?
I'm more talking about the layers which are covered by these, beneficial tax rates. I would think in that layer at least 50% will come
50%. That's a big number. And what is the current number? Any idea that the government has of that?
Yeah, I have a number, but I don't think I can off the cuff say it.
Okay. This is a slightly broader question. You've been extremely successful in widening the tax base. As the base has widened, the tax slabs tend to go down. Do you think that could you consider in the long run bringing the top tax slab to 25%, just in line with your corporate tax rate, top corporate tax rate? Would that be the vision going forward?
Well, eventually the tax rates must be absolutely low and the assessee friendly. Citizens cannot be burdened with taxation. But that is when I've widened my base sufficiently. It can't be that few people pay and they pay huge amounts and I have to run the system. It shouldn't be that. It should definitely be wider the base, lower the tax, and therefore achieve both the objectives of collect your tax from those who can pay it, but collect enough so that you're able to run your schemes.
The new income tax regime, there is a feeling that it disincentivizes savings. How do you react to that?
I gave you the logic.
Yeah.
I can always incentivize you, go for insurance, go for savings, go for this, and come up with a fantastically high rate and say, all right, I've given you discounts, but I need my money. Instead, I'd prefer a completely acceptable and lower rate of interest, lower tax rate, and people to feel that, all right, I'm not being burdened, there's no reason for me to avoid or evade the tax and pay it up.
And you have the choice of deciding your own saving instrument, right? You're not...
I was going to say, I'm on the side, or I belong to that school of thought which says, if the taxpayer is left with more money in his hand because we collect less tax, I would think that he's the best judge to decide where he has to put his money, and he doesn't need an incentive to run his family or to protect them from ill health or to, you know, not bother about his future, save for future and so on. So why do we want to underestimate our citizens? If I give very high tax rate, then I also have to tempt them to say, all right, go about saving it because I'm giving you some incentive here. But I've left more money because I tax you less. You're the best judge to do what you want with your money.
Some of the experts feel that it was a rather bold move for you to reduce the rich tax from 42.7% to 39% in what is an election year. But is it that you've given some and taken away from the other hand as well? And so it's a zero-sum game in a sense?
Where have I taken away?
The real estate, you know, earlier you could move money to real estate. Now the cap is 10 crore. Beyond 10 crore, there is no... There are a couple of...
That's not taking away. It is like saying, I mean, beyond 10 crore of a house that you have, why do you want to also expect favors for a second or the third or the fourth?
Correct.
And there have been instances, I might say, without revealing any names or any kind of... People who bought house, sold house, made immense profits out of it, but who still enjoy these sort of, you know, 10 crore house, I should still get my benefits from the government.
So the bold move in an election year.
But I'm not give and take there. Okay. I've not given away something and taken away something. I'm only giving. Okay. I've not taken away anything.
So that's as I said, a bold move in an election year, because, you know, people don't expect you to do it.
No, but if you're referring to the surcharge, which I brought down and which therefore is going to give benefit to some of the upper middle class and high net worth individual.
That's right.
It's also because the Indian tax system should be seen for not being so harsh. With your 30% surcharge, you were reaching a total tax of 42 point something, 75 or something.
42.7%, yeah.
42% of tax taken away. Even a person who's that, you know, talented enough, skilled enough, and is paid very well for his contribution to the firm and has a good earning.
Yes.
Take away nearly 42.7. Doesn't make our system look fair.
Right.
And therefore we brought it.
You know, MNCs are looking at a China plus one strategy. You know, so you've also spoken about it in your budget speech. You know, we've seen that the manufacturing and export of mobile phones from India has really gone up. Which are the other sectors in manufacturing that could benefit out of this China plus one?
Well, the PLI that we've given out with 13 sectors is definitely a China plus one list, which is sunrise sectors, which are important sectors for India to have its own strength. That's exactly the China plus one kind of a...
Okay. You know, there is a funding winter in the startup ecosystem. In fact, some of the startups that were doing really well have come off their valuation highs. What is the government specifically planning to do about this? You know, this government has done a lot for the startup community in the last few years. So what next? What would you do?
But I think the funding is also waiting to see more innovative startups claim for the next stage. It's not as if it's a funding winter, or it's not now a scarcity of funds. It's more funds seeing the opportunity that is available for them. And they want to look at better options also, even among the startups. Right. And India, which started in 2016 in a major push, I'm sure startups existed before, but the push happened with the Honorable Prime Minister in 2016 announcing a policy and subsequently coming up year after year some concession. So they also go through a cycle, one round done, the next round of good options. They are there, they will, I'm sure, be available.
Nirmala ji, you will be meeting the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors later this month in Bangalore. What is your message to them, and what are your main agenda items that you will take up and highlight?
The agenda, of course, is by now fairly well determined. we will be talking about the debt situation globally, because many countries which were even middle income countries have suddenly got into debt traps, and those traps are really vicious traps. They're not able to come out of it. Now, during the pandemic, debt servicing, there was a scheme which the IMF and also looking at the G20 formulation, there was a plan which had come, debt servicing, and many of these countries didn't have to service their borrowing for a certain period because of the pandemic, and there was a call for extending it. It was extended, but we are also making sure that enough monies are available with these institutions, multilateral institutions, so that they are able to better respond to situation, have better leverage over the funds that they already have with them. So these are matters of discussion: debt servicing, also debt financing, multilateral finance institutions and their reforms, about which Honorable PML has spoken several times: UN reform, IMF reform, WTO reform, World Bank reform, and so on. So we'll be discussing many of these. Also looking at a global kind of a SOP to be available, to be agreed upon for regulating crypto assets, right, whilst recognizing the central bank as the authority for issuing cryptocurrency. The rest of the assets which are being created outside, which are using very useful financial technologies, even those will have to be discussed, because regulation cannot be done by any one country singularly. It has to be a collective action, because technology doesn't brook any borders.
Okay. Nirmala-ji, you have to answer this question, specific question. You've presented 5 budgets so far. Which has been the most memorable budget?
Very difficult to say. Each one had its own challenge, but well, each one has its own charm.
Okay. Now, one last question. After months of hard work, you managed to put this whole thing together. How does Nirmala Sitharaman unwind? What do you do? Do you ever take a break? What do you do to unwind?
Well, listen to a lot of music.
What music do you listen to?
Classical Indian music, both Hindustani and Carnatic. I sleep well every day.
I think we should be in a happy
routine.
We should be in a happy place that the finance minister of the country sleeps well.
Absolutely, because we have a good prime minister who's got that kind of a vision, and the strength of the leadership that he brings along helps the country. So
yes, that too.
Good sleep.
Thank you, Nirmala-ji, for your time. Thank you for the first interview to a private channel and a streaming service. And more importantly, congratulations on a very well delivered budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.